The great philosophers. This goes back about 2,500 years. So it's not just something that somebody just invented overnight. It wasn't because the founders were exceedingly intelligent. It came from thinking over the centuries. This comes from the great philosophers, such as Aristotle, who studied under Plato, Cicero, who was a great Roman senator, Charles de Montesquieu, a political philosopher, and John Locke, who was also a philosopher and historian during the Enlightenment period. And I'll go over some of what they have contributed to the Constitution. This is a span of about 350 BC until the late 17th century. Every philosopher worth noting has delved into these great works that these great men have talked about. Timeless discussions for days on end. And in short, Adams put it, I'm merely trying to state that down through the ages, great-minded men all shared the same principles. These same discussions were shared by men who wrote our founding documents during the early forming of our republic. John Locke, a great philosopher, who wrote at length about protecting property rights and individual liberty, was asked, and where is this fantastical place in which these ideas can be put into practice? And he said, America, because it's the only place that didn't really have anything, and it looked like a perfect proving ground for liberty. Okay, what kind of, anybody know what kind of governmental system the government describes us as having? Most people don't even know this, and they're pretty shocked to find out that it is a Republican form of government. Now, in particular law for a constitutional republic, so it's a republic based on laws. I'm not talking about political parties here. I'm talking about systems of government. Now, most people, when you talk to them and ask them this question, think it's a democracy. They believe this because most people talk about democracy very positively in most cases. They believe that this because most people talk about democracy very positively in private groups and describe themselves as democracies where majority rules. And everybody thinks that majority rule is always good, right? Everybody should always get what they want. Well, hopefully we'll prove that wrong today. This works great in small groups because they're small groups and everybody knows each other and they have access to everyone. So you have a larger impact on the political system that you're around. So democracy here works out the best. In a republic with a little r, there are many aspects of democracy throughout, such as voting in district elections for local government seats, congressional representatives, and issues here and there. As for the federal government, we vote directly for district representatives who will then go to Washington, D.C. and represent our district based on the will of the people, balanced with budget concerns, policy, and constitutional concerns. They are part of the 435 who represent this country on a district level. At least it's supposed to work that way. We never see half of what they do, and they write bills, vote on laws, and sit on committees on our behalf. Otherwise, we'd all be very busy running to the polls and reading bills instead of being productive and working. So we elect to send someone. If they don't do a good job according to their powers under the Constitution, such as voting, record, and listening to our concerns, they get replaced in 2 years. And that's if people who elect them do their homework and watch what their representatives are doing. And what I meant to say by what they are doing is very important. If you look at the Constitution, we have everything that they're allowed to do in it. If they try creating a law that's beyond their power to do, if it's not written in the Constitution, they shouldn't be handling that. It's against their authority to do so. Such as we have this Obamacare, and we've got all these departments that we don't need anymore that have basically taken over the country because we have this massive administrative state now that's just gotten out of hand. And that's why we have the Constitution, to prevent dictatorships from happening. And this is how you get a dictatorship, when they're able to fool the public into thinking they need things that they don't. And when they do that, they disrupt the free market, they replace it with crony capitalism, and then you have people marching in the streets saying capitalism is bad, when capitalism really isn't bad. It's the crony capitalism that's bad, which reminds us a lot of fascism. So we don't want that. What we want is for them to obey the Constitution, and if there's anything a particular state wants to do, we have the 10th Amendment, which is the states' rights amendment. And we need to have more tenthers out there, people that believe that if you want to go ahead and try something, you use the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment is able to make states different in their own ways. So if say you wanted to try in Vermont, you wanted to have single payer health care, well, go ahead and vote on it. As long as it's not a federal government matter and you don't do it all over the country, go ahead and do it. That way the rest of the country can either look at it and see if it's failing or see if it's positive or not, see if they want to try it, or it might attract different people, it might repel different people. So that's what we mean by you vote with your feet. If you don't like the state for what it has in it, you move to a state that has the things you like in it. A lot of people don't like to say, well, why do I have to move? Why can't we just have this all over the country? Well, that's not the way it's supposed to work, and that's the consequence of freedom. We should always compare with the Constitution what they vote on or propose. As you do this a few times, it becomes easy, and records are available all over the internet. Consider Conservative Review. They have very good records. They have Liberty scores on people that you can actually look up, find out what they voted on, and find out what kind of person they are. Now, this isn't really a partisan website. It's based off of conservatism, which is actually preserving the founding principles of the American Revolution and our American government. So whoever doesn't go by those is going against the Constitution. So it's always good to go with people who, no matter what they call themselves, normally it's going to be a Republican. You're not going to find any in the Democrat Party right now, but you're going to find that some Republicans are just like the other side, and you can't listen to them. And that's what Conservative Review is for, to let you find out who's who in the zoo, right? Let's see. The Senate is another story. I haven't talked about them, but I'll try to discuss them a little bit at the end of the story. The framers of our government all spoke very badly about direct democracy. Benjamin Franklin described it as two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. It's the tyranny of the majority, or as Aristotle coined the phrase, mobocracy, or mob rule. This kind of government is not rooted in natural law. It's rooted in whatever the majority want because the majority voted on it. Think about it this way as an example. Let's go back to the Old West. I saw a video one time that gave me inspiration for this. I forget where it came from, but it kind of had this story in it. Say you have a criminal that's on the run after some villagers accuse him of shooting, let's say, a farmer. The villagers form a posse and go off on their own and hunt down this individual and enact their justice. Well, democracy's won. They've hanged him, or they've shot him, whatever they want to do with him, right? Now, in a constitutional republic, we have what's called a sheriff, the guy that knows what the laws are, and he's there to enforce all these laws. So he gets in there and he says, well, no, this guy does have some certain rights that he's afforded, and we are going to protect those rights. We're not going to just hang him. He's going to see a jury of his peers. I'm going to hold him for a little while, and he's going to get a fair trial. And then he may hang or he may not. I don't know. But that's how justice is supposed to work. So that's the difference between a direct democracy, which is total mob rule, chaos, whatever. Anybody can vote away your house. They can vote away your life. But in a constitutional republic, those things are protected. And that's one of the things in the Constitution that is protected as well. Discuss the Constitution. Getting back to that, we must first examine our Declaration of Independence. It has been described as the gold that frames the Constitution, and here's why. Everything in the Constitution is the governing expression of everything in the Declaration of Independence, meaning instead of a declaration, it puts those words into action. From the Declaration, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It goes on much further than this, but this is the the part I'm going to focus on right now. These same words practically verbatim in the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, the Virginia Declaration of Rights, and Pennsylvania's Declaration of Rights by different men, and Thomas Jefferson no doubt borrowed from them to create the Declaration of Independence, and they all borrowed from John Locke. The only difference is that they added property to this list, but they all agreed that property rights were part of liberty. These words are universally appealing because they are true. And why are they true? Because there is nothing to argue with. Everyone has, as John Locke called it, a circle of liberty around us that cannot be denied by any man. So as a matter of fact, John Locke's writings are the resource Jefferson tapped from to write the Declaration of Independence. These rights cannot be given by man nor taken away. They're called negative rights and natural rights. These are unalienable, which means they belong to us by virtue of our humanity and are not given by government, as many progressive philosophers like Rousseau, Hegel, Roosevelt, Crowley, Wilson, Comte, and Dewey would all have us believe. The only time we get into trouble is when our circle is invading another person's circle, or when we're in somebody else's circle with our circle, and we try to act outside of our circle. As in violating another's unalienable rights to fulfill their own desires. If we're invited into a circle, for instance, we must live by that circle's rules while we are there. Just as in this classroom, well, I'm not in a classroom, I'm in my living room now, but I was going to be in a classroom. I must obey the school's rules, and so must you. If we don't, we can get into a lot of trouble from one form or other, because that circle of liberty that we're in also has rights. The Golden Rule is a good example of all of this. Do unto others as you've had done to yourself. Right? I mean, it's right because it is right. You can't really explain it. It's just right. No politician, judge, or lawmaker made that up. We just all know it to be true. It's right versus wrong and good versus evil at the same time. To further break down these unalienable rights, let's take one at a time.